everybody. We're getting comfortable and just kind of chillaxing in this video. This isn't an official review or anything, it's a tag video. So I thought, why don't we sit down, have a cup of tea together. Here's my cup of tea, I'm not just saying that. And let's do the Malazan Reader Tag. Now this was a tag put out by one of my favorite new YouTubers. I don't know actually if she is a new YouTuber or just new to me. The Counselor of Moonspawn is an awesome Malazan booktuber, or at least right now she's just doing Malazan. She might branch out later. She has this great video about women and Malazan and why there doesn't seem to be that many Malazan women readers represented. She mentions Google Analytics that right now she's at like 99% male, and actually I have seen that same problem when I was back doing exclusively Malazan videos. I would get like 95-96% male. And so she talks about why she thinks that is and why she thinks that's wrong, because obviously she's a big fan of, well, I guess not wrong, but like why she wishes that is going to change in the future, because obviously she is a woman and loves Malazan and wants other women as well as men and people just in general to like Malazan. So I really enjoyed that video, would strongly recommend it. I'm also going to have her on my next segment of Malazan Debrief. We're going to talk about Reaper's Gale. That'll probably be coming out in the next couple of weeks over the holiday break here in the US. So be excited for that. But she tagged me in this tag about Malazan readership, and I thought it'd be really fun. So let's do it together. Question number 1. How did you find out about Malazan? I've told the story a couple times on the channel, but it was one of my friends. His name is Jim. Thank you, Jim. He sometimes watches these videos. He is in my, or I guess it was, back when I lived in San Diego, we had a D&D/board game group. We would meet every week, had a ton of fun, love all those guys. And we were just talking about books one night, and he brought up that he was reading this book called Malazan. It sounded crazy and kind of funky, and so we started talking about it, and I was interested. So I didn't read them right away, but I put it on my to read on Goodreads, and then eventually found actually Gardens of the Moon randomly at a used bookstore, and because I knew about it from Jim, I picked it up, and then eventually gave it a try. 2, describe your experience reading it for the first time. Now this is very interesting because the first time that I read it, and I am always sorry that I have done that, I did actually DNF it. I read Gardens of the Moon and enjoyed it, but also, as most people do during the first read-through, felt a little, the style was a little jarring to me, the world felt a little immense, I felt a little lost, especially once I got into Deadhouse Gates. The first 100 pages of Deadhouse Gates were very hard for me, especially the Ikariam and Mappo storyline when they come into the Temple of Shadow in the desert. That was just very confusing and odd to me, and I felt so lost that I kind of like set it aside and said I'll come back later, and so I DNF'd that at the time, unfortunately. I did come back though. I restarted Gardens of the Moon and went all the way through, obviously, and loved it that second time through. When did you realize this series was going to be an all-time favorite? This is tough. A couple moments stand out for me. One is the ending of Memories of Ice. I think that's fair for everyone. I should say I'm going to keep this spoiler-free, so I won't go further than that. The battle at the end of Memories of Ice, or in the middle, I should say, Kapustan of Memories of Ice, just the scope of it, I was just blown away. And then with that conclusion, of course. And then I think even more so, the Battle of Igatan in Bone Hunters. Really, I mean, I remember like staying up way past when I should. I run a coffee shop, so I get up really early in the morning, but I had to finish Igatan, so I stayed up to like 3 in the morning just reading this one chapter. You all know about it if you've done it, because I had to finish it. And I was groggy the next day, but so glad that I finished it. And so I think that's my first premonitions. Toll of the Hounds especially nailed it in for me. I love that book. And then since after Toll of the Hounds, I was basically like, if this series lands at all, it's going to be some of my favorite fantasy of all time. And then with such a great ending as The Crippled God, I knew that it was going to be #1 of all time for me. So a couple sort of escalating moments that I knew that as I read. 4, what is your favorite aspect of the series? I have a huge video talking about this. The postmodern elements of the Malazan world, not just in its content, but also in its structure. I'm a postmodernist at heart. I don't believe in a view from nowhere. I don't believe in a over meta narrative that everyone fits into, or our ability to know that meta narrative for certainty. And so I love the way the Malazan series is told. And yet, I think what most people think postmodernism is nihilism, but it's not. There's so much meaning in our different perspectives and recognizing power structures and how they affect our lives, and stories and meta-narratives and how they affect it, and fighting against that while also seeking to live within that is so meaningful beyond just a rejection of things. And so I love that Erikson gets into that. Again, I have a whole video on that I'm sure that I'm going to link up top. You should check it out if you're interested in more on that, but I love that and could talk about that for hours. 5, nothing is truly perfect. Share a little gripe you have with Malazan. I think my biggest gripe is that I do wish Gardens of the Moon was a little bit more accessible, because I actually do think later books are accessible. I think to a certain extent reading Malazan is a acquired skill because the world is so in-depth and strong and rich that it takes a little while to get used to it. But I do think some of the writing elements, and Erikson has chalked this up, I think rightly to him, mainly writing shorter fiction and shorter stories before jumping into this, where it's really meaty, and it causes some people, it's a stumbling block to some people, which I find a bummer because obviously I think the whole series as a whole. So I wish that first book was a little more accessible. Not necessarily that they like handheld the reader more, but like the writing style itself was just a little more accessible, like it is really as soon as we get to Memories of Ice especially, but even Dead House Gates I think is a little bit more accessible. What are your favorite and least favorite installments? You can choose more than one if you can't decide. I'm gonna try to pick just one. I am helped by the ability that I already did a tier ranking of my Malazan books. You can check that out up above where I talk about every installment. And I love all of them. None of them are bad books. But if I have to choose a favorite, right now it's going to be The Crippled God as my favorite, followed close behind by Toll the Hounds. And then House of Chains just barely is going to be at the bottom of my list. Although it has one of the most tragic and beautiful moments with Tavor. Man, that's a good book, and it's my least favorite of the series. This is such a good series. So good. How many times have you read the series? Only once. I mean, some of the books I've read twice. Dead House Gates and Gardens of the Moon I've read twice. I've skimmed through a lot of Memories of Ice, but I haven't really read it all the way through. So only once. Only once. I'm a Malazan baby if you go on like the Reddit server. 8. Besides Malazan Book of the Fallen, what other series from the Malazan world have you read? Oh, this is so embarrassing. None. I've only read the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Next year in 2021, I plan to finish that out by reading the rest of the Esselmont stuff. And then I will probably wait till I know when there's a release date for the final book in the Karkanos trilogy before starting that. And I am hoping, Steven Erikson, I know you're watching a lot of YouTube these days. If you're watching this, I would love to get an advanced copy of that final Karkanos book. One of my huge goals on this channel is to get an arc someday, which I think would be so cool. And if it was for my favorite author, I think that would be even more cool. Or The Witness. I would take the first book in the Witness trilogy. Boy, I'm just pandering now. Okay, here we go. Number 9. What are your reading interests beyond Malazan? Well, I have a ton of them. I mean, I love, probably no surprise to people, I like philosophy and economics. I don't tend to read full works on those, but more like essay format or smaller things. I guess I did read Capital this summer, so I guess I do read full books. Anyway, I like nonfiction in those senses, but I just read a book called An Indigenous People's History of the United States, which I thought was great. But primarily, I really most consistently read within the fantasy genre. I just love what that genre at its best can do in a storytelling sense. And number 10, what advice would you give to a first-time reader? Well, I'm going to have a video with 3 tips for first-time readers out next week, I believe, especially to help all those people in Mike's Book Reviews readathon as they get into the books. But just to give a little preview, one of my main tips is momentum is key in reading Malazan, and part of that is to be okay not understanding everything. I think especially with modern fantasy, we have been trained that we should understand everything that's happening, or it's not good world building, or it's not a good magic system if we can't completely understand it. And Malazan really pushes back against that, where you're not going to know everything. You're not going to remember all the character names, just like in your real life you don't remember everyone's name. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have to experience the world in an organic fashion, and sometimes that means being confused, sometimes that means not knowing stuff, and I would really discourage first-time readers from like getting obsessed with checking the dramatis personae or glossary or Wikipediaing stuff for Google searching or looking for images to make things clear. Like, there's going to be a lot of stuff thrown at you, and just kind of keep going, keep reading. If you don't understand anything, that's fine. You'll understand what you need to get the whole of the book. I really think that is key, because if you get bogged down in the details, you're not going to enjoy the world as you should. That's my biggest recommendation. And I'm so excited more people are coming to the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I am excited that there is such a community on YouTube being built around Malazan. I mean, one of the reasons I started this channel was because I didn't think there were enough people talking about it, and now all of a sudden I see a whole ton of people like Ruthan, obviously the Counselor of Moonspawn, Isker Jarak, Philip Chase, Alan over at the Library of Alexandria. Obviously I'm talking about it. Books with Brittany, Kitty G, I found her videos. They're all so much more than I ever expected, and then of course Mike is going to start them next year. So really excited about all of this. Yes, read more Malazan. I'm looking at the people that were already tagged in this video. I'll put a couple of their videos in the description. Just if you haven't found these Malazan people, you should look them up. They have great videos, and the only one here that I can find that I know has read most of Malazan but hasn't done the tag is going to be Alan over at the Library of Alexandria. I know he loves a challenge, so consider yourself tagged, Alan, and anyone else who wants to do it. Obviously, please do it. Spread that Malazan name more. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment in the section below, answer the questions especially. If you don't have a YouTube channel, just do it in my comments. I would love to hear about how you heard about Malazan and your recommendations for first-time readers and all that jazz. Also, please join the Patreon if you want to support me and the channel. As always, first in, last out.